So agenda item number 1, projects. So as an overview, the current biennium is the period from July 1, 2021 to June 30, 2023. That's correct, Jill, right? That's the current biennium, the period in which the period that the state budgets. So during this period, the state has invested in the incentive programs, plural, the rebate program and the tax credit program, a little over $5 million. That's 1.2 million in rebate funds and about 3.9 million in credits, not actual cash tax credits. And as I'm talking about numbers, know that most of these numbers are going to be estimates because a lot of these projects haven't yet gone through their audit. So the numbers could change, but this is a pretty good estimation. For that $5 million investment, the estimated total spend on these projects in Minnesota is 23 million. So that's 23 million back on your $5 million investment. And like 4 million of that isn't actual cash even. So I feel really, really good about how the incentive programs are doing. I feel good about it, but of course, we are not satisfied with the projects. We're thrilled with the projects we've got. We want more projects and we want bigger projects. I know it's been a real issue for a lot of folks, particularly crew folks. The budget level of these projects that we've done, have been $1.5 million to $2 million, which, as you all know, is pretty small budget. So the wages that are being paid are not where we want them to be. Know that we continue to talk to studios about doing either larger feature films or series here in Minnesota. There's definitely interest, and we're just waiting, somebody's got to be the first to do something of size. We had a great conversation this week, so as we do every week with somebody. So I feel very optimistic that in 2023, we are going to get projects of the size that are going to pay living wages, hire union crew, along with, new people new to the industry. So, fingers crossed. But if anybody has any questions about those projects, you can throw them in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself and ask. Really? Wow.
Are these mostly taking place in Duluth, kind of up north?
Yeah. So actually here, I'm just going to share my screen so you can see I love spreadsheets. So the rebate projects, and these are the projects that are the smaller budget. The rebate is the program that only gets 500,000 per year. So this is for projects that are fairly low budget. And of these, Jill, how many of these are northern Minnesota? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that right? 5 of those projects were shot up in the Duluth Iron Range. Yeah, 4 or 5.
Sorry, I was trying to find my mute button when I was looking at the spreadsheet. It's four of those that were up north.
Okay. And then if we move over to the tax credit projects, body language, Merry Kiss Cam, fundraiser, and Me Hereafter are all.
Me Hereafter is all over the place. I don't know if they're doing northern Minnesota
Oh,
specific.
that's right. That's a fairly recent one. Okay. Yeah, the rest are metro area. So it's a pretty good mix of up north and metro. So now we just have to get some things in southern Minnesota too. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All right then. Ricky, do you want to say anything else about what's going on in sorry. What's going on up north? Oh, Ron just asked a question about the percent between film, TV series, and commercials. Well, tax credit, the tax credit certified projects, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 projects have been certified. 5 were feature films, 2 were television series, 3 were television series, and 1 was a package of commercials. On the rebate front, it's pretty evenly split: feature films, commercials, a couple of pilots, and TV series. And how many are SAG? That that I don't have the answer to. I don't know if Casey wants to speak to that.
Not enough.
Not enough. Yes.
Part of the
That
problem is the budgets are so low on these because our incentive is so low. And as we grow the incentive, larger budget projects will be coming in, and they are more inclined to hire union, both SAG-AFTRA and IATSE, and obviously Teamsters. But that's all I'll say about that now.
Well, to go back to what I said before about the budget levels, a lot of these smaller budget features that have come through have been on SAG contracts. They've been on, modified low budget or low budget SAG contracts, but they have not been on IATSE or Teamster contracts for the most part. And that's not great. But there have,
Melody,
yeah,
it's Ricky. And first of all, thank you for putting this together. It's great to see everybody here. And for the SAG question, I can tell you that a lot of what we have up here are SAG contracts also. And we hope to see some of that change, but it's growing our infrastructure. And as that grows we've got bigger budgets, we will see more of the Teamsters and IATSEs. It's coming, it's around the bend. We just have to grow into that.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing to keep in mind is that the tax credit program, which is really what the draw is for these bigger budget projects, really didn't start until January of this year. So the fact that we've certified 9 is I think a really good start. And when we get down to the legislative portion of the agenda, we can talk more about the tax credit. But Ricky, did you want to give any other updates about the Northland, other than you guys are going to get slammed with snow?
Yes, we are. I'm just running to the grocery store so I can stock up. Yeah, we could get about 20 inches or more, it sounds like, but we're getting ready, and it's always just a new adventure. And speaking of new adventures, yes, we've had a lot of those up here lately. I think the future is bright. As Melody has just said, she's getting a lot of phone calls at the office there, and it seems like every day we're getting a new project that's asking about us. No, not everyone is going to land, but we've got some really good potentials that look very promising that are coming in our direction. I think March, there's a couple in March that we're actually hoping that we can put side to side, not on top of each other, because it is, as you all know, we still have to build that infrastructure for having enough of a crew base to take two projects of that size. We just wrapped a couple weeks ago with fundraiser and body language, and they shot at the same time, and that was tough for us. But I mean, the more workshops that we do up here, the easier it's going to get. So that's the goal.
Yeah, I did want to give a plug to your fantastic board chair up there, Dan Stocky, who came down and, well, you and Sherry and Dan all came down for a fundraising breakfast that we had last week. And at that breakfast, if you were there, you saw Dan give a presentation called Content is a Product, which, given that a large part of the audience at this breakfast were business and corporate people, not industry people, it was a great presentation. And Dan was kind enough to videotape a longer version of that presentation. If you want to see it, I dropped it in the chat. I'm also gonna drop in there the Upper Midwest Film Office address. So we will move on to the Minnesota Film Alliance. So let me explain. You may have heard me talking about this over in the the period leading up to the pandemic. The Minnesota Film Alliance is a 501c6, which means that it is a nonprofit, but it's an industry trade association. And what these types of industry trade associations do, they are member-based, and they do a lot of lobbying and advocacy. So all of the groups that you hear about that are lobbying on various issues, Realtors Association or the Hospitality Association, those are all 501c6 organizations. So we had started to ramp this up, and then the pandemic hit, and we just, everything's, well, and so we have now reactivated this organization, the Minnesota Film Alliance, which will take on what Minnesota Film and TV used to do in terms of hiring lobbyists and doing all of the, the on the ground work with the legislature each year. Minnesota Film and TV is a member of the Alliance, as is SAG-AFTRA and the Teamsters and a bunch of individuals. I put the website in there. We now have a website, yay! So I urge you to take a look at that, become a member, tell everybody in the industry and I just want to quickly let you know, let's see, we do have right now this is being, as it's being set up and kind of launched, and as we're heading into the legislative session, we have a steering committee, and I just want to name those folks. Casey Lewis from SAG-AFTRA is co-chair of the steering committee with me. And we also have Sarah Hamilton from Rochester, Sherry Marshik and Ricky McManus from Duluth, Abdi Mohammed, Sammy Halaby, and Jane Durkee are members of the steering committee. So if you know any of those folks, you have questions, any of those folks can answer your questions, or you can just go to the website. Does anyone have questions about the Alliance before how does one join? Okay, Raina, you call me or you call Casey if you're interested in getting more involved in the legislative session or in anything having to do with the organization. Right now, recruitment is sort of priority one, because the membership dollars in this organization will pay for the lobbying efforts that we desperately need this year in the legislature. So with that, I want to move on to the legislative agenda. Yes, that's correct, Ron. The legislative agenda is a big one for this year. And I'm just going to tick them off. And then Casey, if you want to follow up with anything that I didn't say, and then we can just have a discussion. You can ask questions. So what we are looking at for an agenda for the industry this year is one, extend or hopefully eliminate the 4-year sunset that currently is on the tax credit. So when they passed the tax credit, they passed it to expire in 4 years. We cannot have that. We have got to get rid of that sunset, and we're feeling pretty optimistic that we'll be able to, but that is a big one. We want to increase the cap on the tax credit. So what the legislature passed was a cap of $5 million per year. That's not per project, that's for the entire year, which explains in a lot of ways why we've gotten only very small budget projects. So we want to increase that annual cap. We have some language changes that we want to make in the statute, technical changes in large part, and things that Jill and I and the state DEED have learned in the first year of running this program. We are learning from the folks that are going through it, what's working, what's not, and we've got some changes that we'll make. Those are just language tweaks. All of those items will go through the tax committees in the House and the Senate. So those are that's the committee that deals with the tax credit. Then also on the agenda is our rebate program. We want to make sure that we're able to retain and fund that rebate program. And I bring that up because I know that we're going to be there will be questions about why we need both programs. Well, if you have a tax credit, why do you need a rebate? And we have an answer for that. It's clearly they're very different programs geared to very different stakeholders and different types of projects. But that is something that we expect that we will have to explain. I did have to explain it 2 years ago when we passed the tax credit and they kept it, but we'll have to explain that again. And finally, and this is a big one, we want to, and like the rebate program, this is an item that will go through the jobs committee in both houses, not the tax committee. We want the state to establish a state film commission within the Department of Employment and Economic Development. So I can give you chapter and verse, all the reasons why, but the simplest explanation is that we are the only state in the country that allows a 501c3 nonprofit to do this work. And it's a terrible model, frankly. And, it was, I understand why it was started this way. And it worked for years, but once incentives became part of the picture and with the changes in the industry, it just doesn't make sense any longer. We need a state film commission. So that's a big ask. But again, I'm optimistic. So Casey, is there anything that I forgot from that lengthy agenda?
I would just, obviously, we're going to, talk about this, but I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate membership in the Alliance. The Alliance isn't an organization with a PO box that some people work at and they make money, and everybody else looks to them for leadership, and those people do all the work. The Alliance is made up of volunteers. They have no budget. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say they have no budget. They have no paid positions. The Alliance's responsibility is essentially to be the bullhorn, from which everyone in the community has a voice. The Alliance is the Alliance, the community that stands to gain from increased film and episodic production coming to the state of Minnesota. So anybody and everybody who would stand to gain from that should be a member of the Alliance.
That goes for everyone from individuals to nonprofit organizations to small businesses, all the way to sports franchises to corporate entities, all of whom rely on a strong industry in the state.
Right. And with those corporations, foundations, organizations, the independent contractors are also should be members of the Alliance. Again, if you have something to gain from production coming here, your voice should be part, your voice should be part of the chorus that is the Alliance.
Mm-hmm.
There are different levels of being getting an annual membership, and I encourage you all to go to the filmalliance.org to see what those are. We're going to be holding, once the session starts, the legislative session, we're going to be holding some gatherings in Duluth, in Rochester, and the Twin Cities to give everybody an update as to the status at that time. We're going to reiterate our goals, and we're going to talk further about the Alliance, but it's going to be an opportunity for people to actually come together physically and be part of that Alliance gathering. And hopefully, if you haven't joined by that point, to join at that point. Go, please, Melody.
Julie had a question, and fair question. She asked if the commission is the same as the Alliance, are they separate? So a state film commission would be a state agency, just like Explore Minnesota, the tourism department, is a state agency. The Alliance is a separate organization that represents the industry. So it's the voice of the industry, because the Film Commission will do, will administer the incentives, will do the location directory, the crew directory, assist filmmakers, do all of that kind of work. But a state film commission will not be advocating for the industry. And that's why the alliance was formed, to be that voice and advocate, because even if we get all of these things in the legislative agenda, that work is ongoing. We are, the legislature meets every year, and the industry, the community has got to be vigilant every year about what they're talking about, what they're looking at, that they're not instituting policies that would be bad for the industry. It's the same as any other kind of membership industry trade association. So two very separate things.
Yeah, and to give everybody on the call an idea of, in addition to the structure that Melody just laid out, every state that has a tax incentive, every state that has a successful incentive in place and has production coming to their state, has a commission and has a lobbying organization. And they work together. They each have their own individual jobs to do, their own specialties, but they do work together for the same cause of either keeping their incentive in place or growing their incentive. Minnesota is, we had production coming here before Canada started offering incentives, and then so many other states started offering incentives. Minnesota didn't offer incentives except for the production rebate, and we got way behind and finally got it done. And we just happened to be the smallest tax credit. And our job, that was in the door. Our allies in the legislature knew which way to go, this way and that way, to get it passed in a Republican-led Senate, and the work with the Democrats in the House, we got it done. But it was very clear to us that was just the entry into that. We would need to grow it. And as with other states at the same time, if they didn't have an incentive, they created one. Those who did have an incentive made it more robust. And so for us to make ours more robust, we need to compete at the level that the other states do, with a commission, with a 501c6. And as Melody just said, it's an ongoing process. I was on the phone with somebody yesterday, and they said, "So when you guys do this alliance, is that going to be around for like 2 years, and then we're just going to let it go?" And I said, no. If we do, the tax incentive will fail. We have to remain vigilant. We have to, again, either continue to fight for it, or we have to grow it, and both, really, until we get to a level that we are truly competitive with other states.
Yeah. I had a question about the production directory that Minnesota Film and TV has. That's doing great. If you don't have a listing, would you please create a free listing for yourself? Not even if you don't think you'll ever get a job through it, because you get your work through referrals or some other kind of network. I understand that, but what you need to understand, and what everybody in the industry needs to understand, is that outside producers, studios that are thinking about Minnesota, that have heard about the tax credit, they go to our website and they look at our production directory, and it doesn't look, if they see that we don't have a lot of crew listed, they're like, I don't know, maybe I don't want to go to Minnesota because I'd have to fly everybody in. So please, for the good of everyone, create a listing. It is, that is the production directory. We got a new website last year, and we changed our production directory from what Minnesota Film and TV used to have to a back end called Real Scout. And Real Scout is is really the industry standard. It's what almost every film commission uses for their production directory and their locations gallery. So that was just, it's the tax credit, the production directory, a state film commission, all of these steps to try and raise the, did someone just sneeze? Bless you. To raise the professionalism of the state and make us more competitive. Jill, can you post a link to the production directory? And yes, talent can list in the directory, absolutely. And so one last thing, and then I'll get to Ricky. So when, not if, when the state establishes a state film commission within deed, that commission will take over the production directory, the locations gallery, which is the way it's done in every other state. And Ricky, you had a question.
Actually, I just wanted to say for everybody that's on the call tonight, the call to action will be when we start hitting the Capitol, that everyone needs to make phone calls to their legislators. And it's so interesting to see that just a talk with with them talking to you as a constituent, the difference that can make, it's huge. And one reason we got the St. Louis County incentive was because people got on the phone and said, this is important. And so each and every person here is very important to make this bigger and better. And so please, please, please remember that. And I'm sure Melody will put a big push out and the Minnesota Film Alliance, so everybody knows when to call and what to say. So you don't have to just say, please do this. We can give you the information. We can fill your mouths.
Yes, absolutely. It's a great point, Ricky. And as we get closer to the session, the Alliance will make available to everybody in one easy to find place the names and contact information for all of the legislators that are on all of the relevant committees. And then also, the link to find your own legislator, because even if they're not on a committee that one of our bills will go through, it's still always a good idea to call your legislator, your representative and your senator, introduce yourself and tell them you work in the industry and why that's important to the state. All right.
I just added something to the chat. It's a link
Oh, yeah.
for you to know who represents you. You put in your I believe it's the zip code and you can see who represents you. I want to
And there have
say
been some changes because there was redistricting.
Yeah.
So it within the metro, like I have a new representative this year. So yeah, be sure to check.
one of the benefits of being a member of the Alliance is to know who to contact and when and what to say. You're a part of the conversation being whatever action items are needed and at that particular time to get done what we need to get done in St. Paul and quite frankly throughout the state. Because it is the Minnesota Film Alliance. But with that, it is incredibly important to contact your representatives. It's one thing for me in my district to reach out to members of the tax or jobs committees in either the House or the Senate. And none of them are my representative. It's a totally different thing if one of you contacts a member of the tax or jobs committee and they are your representative. That means so much more. Just me, I'm just another voice if they're not my representative. If you are their constituent, that means so much more. So it's incredibly important for you to know who your representatives are, and if they are on any of the jobs committees or any of the tax committees.
Or in a leadership position.
Yes.
So like, for example, I am very lucky now in that the chair of the jobs committee in the House is now my representative, Aisha Gomez. So if you live in Powderhorn, Phillips, Aisha is our person. And you know I'm going to be dropping that I'm your constituent line with her every time I talk to her.
Quite frankly, I'm glad you mentioned Aisha, Melody. Aisha Gomez is now in a very influential position. Did you say jobs or tax?
She's tax. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah, she's the tax chair, which is a very important committee for us in the House. Aisha was not favorable of the incentive the last time around. And we need to be friends with her. We need to let her know that the tax incentive isn't for those in Hollywood. It isn't for corporations. It's for all of those actors and crew members who live in her district, who will stand to gain from this. Jobs, economic growth, yeah, we want to talk with her, and we want to let her know how important it is for what we see, how we see this incentive growing, for her to be our friend and to be part of that. So if you are represented by her, by all means, you should know what her contact information is, and be ready for the talking points that come from the Minnesota Film Alliance when it comes time to reach out to her.
Well, one piece of really sort of positive news this past week, I was emailing with her legislative aide, Robin, and Robin was very enthusiastic about the fact that we got the tax credit passed. And so to me, that was a great sign. So, you know, I take great little victories. So if Representative Gomez's legislative aide is positive, I take that as her being positive as well. In terms of committee membership, that has been announced, and you can find it right now on the legislature website. Jill, you want to throw that one in there? But as we get closer, the Alliance will put that information up on their website and blast it out to folks as well. Does anyone have any questions about the agenda? Yeah, go ahead, Michael.
First of all, thank you for everyone to be on being on tonight. And thank you for passing the tax credit. That's a wonderful first step. And maybe I missed this when you were giving, running down the list of things that you wanted to tackle in the legislature. But is there a plan to bump from 25 up to 30 at all?
20% you mean?
Yeah.
No, we're not looking at bumping up the percent. To us right now, the bigger priority is, well, getting rid of the sunset and raising the cap rather than the percentage.
The reason I say that is that Illinois is at 30 and it's kind of like their closest competitor, and it might kind of tick away some of the work there to come here. So
I know, well, it is kind of a whack-a-mole situation because, as Casey mentioned before, every state that has incentives, they change them every year, and every state is just expanding eligibility. So Illinois is raising their percentage to 30. And they also now incentivize non-resident crew. And that is a non-starter in Minnesota. There's a lot of states that are starting to do that just because it's so hard to get crew. And most tax credit programs started out only incentivizing or qualifying resident crew, resident below the line. And that's starting to change. So that's one more thing that we take a step forward and 2 steps back.
Okay, yeah, I was just curious. I just know that's out there, and I thought,
Yeah.
that's a way to maybe get some folks to come here, just because I people that I'm tight with, and that are more smaller budget film in LA, which is like $25 million films. And they're like, if they could get up to 30, 35, we'd really consider it. But anyway, so I just thought I'd throw that out. Thank you.
Yeah. No,
Along-
that's maybe 10 years down the road.
Along that line, though, as you all know, there are incentives up in the North Country that are stackable, where percentages do increase, and that can be done throughout the state. I'm hoping that once we make the improvements to the state incentive, and other counties see the success that is happening up in St. Louis County, and particularly in Duluth, because the closer you get to Duluth, the more stackable things get. I'm hoping that counties in other receptive areas in Minnesota, Rochester being one, will start to do the same. Their leadership will start to see these benefits that St. Louis County and Duluth are experiencing. If you look at a state like Georgia, and I'm not comparing their tax incentive to our tax incentive. If you want to look back when they first passed their tax incentive 15 years ago, yeah, we can compare. But more specifically, the comparison I want to make is, what I want to point out is, you look at a city like Savannah, Georgia. They have their own incentive because they know they have a beautiful spot. Here's to hoping that other areas in Minnesota, Twin Cities as well, will start to create their own incentives to keep production in those areas. And then, it'll be competition within the state, but from the outside in, it'll make the state as a whole more competitive and more enticing.
Yeah.
Which would raise the percentages.
Yeah, and that's very, very common. A lot of states that have a tax credit program statewide also have regional incentives, or what they call upticks in their incentive that allow, if you shoot in a certain area, you get a larger percentage, something like that. But having regional, city, metro, county, regional incentives are a great thing on top of a strong statewide program. Does anyone have any other questions about any of this?
There was a question.
Julie.
I'm sorry, I want to find I think it was directly to me. I don't think. It
Oh,
was
okay.
group.
Julie, you have some.
No, sorry, but it does apply to everybody. Ron had asked me the question: Does Alliance membership get a participation logo bug to put on their own website promoting the Alliance? That is not something we've discussed. It is certainly something that we
That's
can.
a great idea.
Yeah, it is something that we can look at.
We should do that.
And we've also discussed, as the membership begins to grow, obviously we're going to want those corporate logos and the organizational logos, the union logos and such. But we're also, as far as individuals go, we're in the discussion of listing those names. So those individuals would be listed on the MFA website. But yeah, the logo bug, we can certainly discuss that.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Julie, did you have a question or comment?
Yeah, you might have already talked about this. So you were saying that starting a film commission is a part of the legislative agenda. What is involved in making that happen? And does the film board just morph into that? Or how does, maybe we don't need to know how.
Yeah, no, I mean,
how,
I think,
but I'm very curious.
yeah, I am all for transparency. I think everybody should know what the reasoning is, and I'm happy to talk. Oh my God, just put a quarter in me and get me started on this, and I will talk your ear off. But in brief, what is going to be required to get it done is a bill is going to have to be written that would establish this state film commission. It would outline its duties and how it's set up, and then the legislature would appropriate funds to operate the commission. When they do the budget appropriation for the Department of Employment and Economic Development, the funding for staff and everything that's needed for this office will go through the deed budget. So the way it currently works and how we see the future happening, first, the thing to understand is that until the state establishes a film commission, Minnesota Film and TV will continue to do the administration, the production directory, all of that that it currently does. But when the state establishes a film commission, most of what Minnesota Film and TV does will be done by a state film commission. So at that point, the 501c3 that is Minnesota Film and TV will have to either pivot and do something else or sunset and go away. So because it would be, redundant. The Minnesota Film and TV was formed specifically because the state didn't have and wouldn't establish a film commission in 1983. So that's why it was set up that way. It just doesn't make sense to continue this way. So does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Okay. Great.
And do you see that being a big challenge within the legislative agenda of?
Yes and no. Everything is a challenge in the legislature. It's like the tax credit, it's an education process because nobody in the legislature is familiar with the industry and how it works and what incentives are, and in this case, what a film commission is and how Minnesota is different from the rest of the country and why that's not a great thing. So we have a lot of educating to do, which we do hand in hand with the advocacy. It's a lot of all of us talking to our own legislators and helping them understand it, going to their town hall meetings and setting up one-on-one meetings with them, and just sitting across the table from them for half an hour and spewing as much as you can, as much information as you can at them, to help them understand. And also the other thing to keep in mind is don't underestimate the importance of each elected official's legislative aid. You can find the names and contact information for those people on the legislator's website or webpage on the state website. But keep in mind the current, sorry, I have too many thoughts at once. The current information on the state's legislature website is not up to date. So that won't all be accurate until the legislature goes into session. Or right before the legislature goes into session. So that's why we'll get that information out to everyone. But in terms of other pushback, I honestly, fortunately or unfortunately, I am supremely overconfident in our ability to get things done and to convince people. I was overconfident on the tax credit. It took longer than I thought it would, but I knew we could get it done. And I feel the same about all of this. This is such a vibrant industry, such a huge economic driver throughout the country. It just doesn't make sense for Minnesota, which once had such a strong industry, such a thriving production industry, for us not to be going after what is rightfully ours. These are ours. So yeah, I'm optimistic. We are coming up on an hour. So if there's no other questions or discussion on these issues, if anybody else has any announcements or anything that they want to share, or questions about anything we've talked about, you all know how to reach us. You can find contact information for us on our website, for the Alliance on their website. Anybody have anything else that they'd like to share? Yeah, Michael.
So I can't really talk a lot about it, but and Ricky and Sherry know about this, but we shot a pilot for an unscripted show up in Eveleth in August. It's edited. We have a first look with NBC Universal, so we're pitching that, or we're meeting with them after the first of the year. So fingers crossed, it's a go, and it's a show that's going to shoot up in northern Minnesota. That's its home. I can't really say anything about it other than that. But so fingers crossed, send out good wishes that we get that across the finish line. So.
All right. Well, wishing you luck. There was one last question about the upper limit. When we go into the legislature, we want an annual cap of 25 million. That's what we had initially started at. Actually, I think I started even higher than that the first time. But 25 million is what we want as the step up next. That would allow us to really be much more competitive. Oh, Diana, yes, the Midwest Emmy students. This is such a great program. Diana just put a link in the chat. You should all take a look at that. I had such an amazing time when was that, like 3 years ago now? These are some amazing students.
Earlier this year.
Oh man, wow. But these students, the Midwest Emmys is really supporting the future of the industry with these scholarships. So check out the program. And if you have a student or you mentor a student or you teach, let them know about this program. Yay. Anybody else have anything?
I'd like to say something if there's nothing else before we go. But I do want to give folks another opportunity to ask questions if they have them.
Everyone is so shy. Either, yeah, I can't believe it's that we're so good at covering everything. Maxie has a question. Maxie, you want to
Hello,
unmute?
Melody.
Hi,
Yeah.
how are
Hi,
you?
hi. Fine. How are you doing?
Doing well,
Um,
thanks.
It's good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see
My
your
question
name.
is, yeah, my question is, would you guys be developing like a letter template? So, because a lot of times when we're,
Yes.
fundraising, when I've been a part of other organizations, there's been a letter template that we can send to our legislators, or when we're making the call. Will you guys be developing that? Because
Yes, we have always, we've always put out talking points or samples. Yeah, we'll do that. The Alliance will do that. for
okay,
sure.
great. All right, thanks.
Yeah. Casey, I think
Yeah.
the floor is yours.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate one more time multiple things. Go to the Alliance website, please. Look at the membership, becoming a member page to see what you're comfortable for your annual membership. If you're not going to do it right now, definitely as we get closer to the or in the legislative session, please do. Look out for Minnesota Film Alliance social media handles, which should be coming shortly. Though some exist, and they should be popping up. Those that haven't been done yet, keep an eye on social media for calls to action once we enter the session. To Maxie's question, yes, there will be talking points. There will be we will
Materials.
yeah, materials. We'll give you what to say, how to say it, flavor it on your own to your legislator or the legislators that we're asking folks to reach out to. But it's all about preparation, organization, communication, and executing all that at the right time towards the right people. When we say,
And Casey, with one voice, because just like the unions, we are stronger together.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
all
yeah,
of the different groups that we're working with, we want to be on the same page about what our priorities are and what we're asking
Yeah,
for.
which is essentially the purpose of the Alliance. The Alliance is the umbrella for all those who have a vested interest in seeing increased film and episodic content production come to Minnesota. Anybody who wants to be under that umbrella, under that one voice, a part of that one voice, in those lines of communication and the execution of the organization that's being done. Yeah, it's all, we are one. We, the community, are the Alliance. Everybody on this call, all your colleagues and coworkers, we are the Alliance, and therefore you should be part of the Alliance. And that's where I will leave it.
Okay, and I will finish by answering this last question. Yes, the fine line between what a 501c3 and a 501c6 can do in terms of lobbying is not really a fine line, it's a gulf. So the Alliance, a 501c6 has basically limitless ability to lobby, where there are real limits. A 501c3 status from the IRS is for charitable and educational organizations, nonprofits. So it's really not a lobbying organization. That's why a 501c6 makes more sense to be doing that kind of work. And with that, y'all know how to contact us. I want to thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or you want to get more involved. And I look forward to seeing you all at the legislature. So good night, everybody.